Welcome to Canada's podcast.
Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi, Managing Editor of Canada's Podcast. Joining me today on Calgary's podcast is Tomas Romero, who is co-founder of Romero Distilling Company in Calgary. Thanks for joining us today, Tomas.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, let's talk about Romero. Tell me what you guys do, and we'll go from there.
We make rum, and lots of it. From what I understand, we're the largest rum distillery in Canada, making rum from scratch.
Wow! And when did Romero start?
We incorporated in 2018, started production in 2019.
Okay, and can you give me a sense of how much rum you make in a year?
Well, I guess in terms of barrels, that's actually a good question. It depends on the year. It's a little bit cyclical, depending on demand and setting aside barrel inventories. Out of the gate, we were producing at a rate of around 80,000 bottles a year. Equivalent. That would be 750 ml bottles at 40%. Current barrel inventories would be around 450 barrels of rum sitting downstairs here right now. So
okay. So tell me, where does the rum go? And where is it sold?
Where are we sold? Right now, we're available here in Canada domestically, in Alberta and the Maritimes. We're down in the U.S. with some limited distribution in Florida, New York, a little bit in Arizona, and California.
Okay. Tomas, what were you doing before you started this?
I was in oil and gas for a long time. I did environment regulatory, and also did a little bit of construction as well.
And so how did this all come about as you got into the rum business?
Honestly, it was a bit of a fun hobby. I'd done it for a while and had an opportunity to make a change when I was wrapping up on a major project up in Edmonton, and put together a business plan on a rum distillery. And I put that business plan in front of my dad to get his opinion on it. And he's like, well, I'm retiring in a year. If you actually decide to do this, I'd like to do it with you.
Oh.
So yeah, he called my bluff. So that conversation happened around mid 2017. And it's kind of hair straight back ever since. As we mentioned before, we incorporated in 2018 so we could get the loans and the leases for the property here. And yeah, hair straight back from construction. So
what was your dad doing?
He is a process engineer with backgrounds in both oil and gas as well as mining, coal mining. Actually, that goes back to where I grew up in Sparwood and Fernie. He worked in the mines down there for a long time. That's actually where he finished his career.
So what your story sounds familiar to me, and I don't know if you know the boys over at Bridgeland Distillery.
Yeah.
What is it about you guys that are in these professions that whether an engineer or whatever, and you just decide, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to own a distillery.
That's a good question. For me personally, I wanted to do something. I wanted to make something. Dealing in environment and regulatory in particular, you're just dealing with issues on a day-to-day basis. You don't see necessarily the end result of the fruits of your labor, so to speak. In doing something like a distillery, what we do, making rum, I actually get to taste the result, and I find it a lot more rewarding than what I was doing before.
Yeah. So, Tomas, when you look at this whole industry, did you jump on it at a right time? That there seems to be, whether it's craft spirits or craft beer, if they're popular these days, right? Good timing for you guys.
It is. I think there's a lot of local support, with the support local movements.
Yeah.
And There's also some open-mindedness too, as we're starting to export. I guess even within Canada, you're getting outside your province, you're essentially exporting. There's open-mindedness to try new things, and there's let's say, I guess maybe even an element of respect for it. Like, given it's small batch, high quality. That seems to be a bit recognized, and it's helping us to grow in some of these other markets that not necessarily may have worked years ago, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You obviously been like rum. Have you been a rum drinker?
It's kind of a funny story how I got into the rum. Kind of started out with my wife banning me from drinking whiskey.
Oh,
So I had to find something different. So I started getting into rum, and I tried some of the mainline stuff, and I wasn't very impressed. I was like, well, if I got to go down this road, there's got to be something here. So I tried kind of a couple of bottles up on the shelf. I was like, well, this stuff actually ain't too bad. And started trying some different ones and kind of got into a little bit more and actually quite enjoyed the category. And just kind of went from there.
So, where do you get the recipes, I guess, for the different rums? How do those come about?
That was a lot of trial and error. Actually, that was the years as a hobby in the shop, in the back 40, just trying different stuff. Put something together, think you might like it, take it out, try it with the boys in the dressing room, or out after ball, or and then finally when you start getting people asking, hey, do you got any of that stuff with you? You might have hit a recipe that's not too bad. You're not just trying to force free booze on people and they're asking you for something. It's you kind of cross that threshold.
Stay ahead of the game with our expert tips and strategies that will help your business thrive in a digital era. CanadasPodcast.com. Subscribe now.
So, I know, and I must confess, I've been in your fine establishment a few times. And what I find interesting is the history there. And, on the walls, there's those big panels telling the history going back about, alcohol in the province of Alberta. Can you tell us a little bit of that story and the history there of what's up there inside your establishment and why it's there?
Totally. So the history of rum running in Alberta. There's a lot of people aren't aware. A lot of rum was run through the southern portion of the province, primarily through the Crow's Nest Pass.
Yeah.
The two main players that were involved were Emilio Picariello and Florence Lissandro, or Filomena Lissandro. She went by Florence, I guess. So how it all came about. In 1916, alcohol became illegal in Alberta. It was voted in by referendum at the time, but it was still legal in British Columbia. So Emilio, who was an Italian immigrant, landed in Toronto, spent a pile of time in Fernie before settling in the Crow's Nest Pass, still had all his buddies in Fernie. And so he used these friends to help bring booze from Fernie to the Crow's Nest Pass and distribute it out to southern Alberta from there. In the early days, how Florence got involved is she would take along as a decoy. They would actually do a lot of these runs on a Sunday afternoon and have her along to make it look like they were out for a Sunday drive. So that helped them to avoid law enforcement. However, there were also lots of rival bootleggers, and these bootleggers would often try to intercept these shipments as they were coming across the border, as they knew what was going on. And very quickly, Florence had to learn how to handle herself and drive to get out of some of these sticky situations. Turned out she was really good at both and worked her way up through the ranks to be one of Emilio's lead hands and top drivers when this whole thing came to an end, unfortunately, in 1923 and led to her untimely demise. So essentially from 1916, when this came in, up until September of 1923, they were moving significant amounts of booze from B.C., from Montana. Once I should mention, B.C. followed suit and enacted prohibition in 1917, so they lost their supply of booze out of there. Then after that, they started moving it up from Montana up to Alberta. But then in 1920, with the passing of the Volstead Act, they lost their supply of booze from Montana. And this is actually when the rum starts to show up, and the cool connection to this story and the tie to rum in Alberta. Up till now, these guys were just taking booze that was legal in one jurisdiction to somewhere where it's illegal, right? With the passing of the Volstead Act in 1920, the distilleries in the US were all shut down. Everything in Canada by this time had also been shut down. Prohibition was enacted in every province with the exception of Quebec by this time in 1920. So there really wasn't access to alcohol anymore. So rum was being run up the up the East Coast, coming all the way in to Montreal, or not, I guess not Montreal, but the ports in Quebec that have access there off the St. Lawrence. And then also up the West Coast, with the final stop in the line often being the Port of Vancouver on the Canadian side to service the Pacific Northwest in the US. It was easier to make landfall on the Canadian side, get less Coast Guard, less military, less police, just less people in general, and take it across an uncontrolled land crossing to service the Pacific Northwest. And from what I understand, Emilio and Florence managed to get their share of distribution coming from both sides. So there was coming in by rail from out east, by rail from out west. Mm-hmm. And yeah, they were moving some pretty significant supplies of booze right up until 1923 when they were doing a transfer from Fernie to Blairmore, and ended up getting in an altercation with a police officer, and unfortunately an officer was shot. They were charged and they were both hung, and Florence ended up being the only woman ever to be hung in Alberta. So I know I jumped around a lot on that story. Normally I take that about 45 minutes to go through it on the storyboards, also as a guide. So if I was a little scattered, I apologize. If there's anywhere you want to add a little depth to it, but yeah.
It's a fascinating story. And if anybody's from Calgary that's going to visit Romero, there's right up on the walls. And I know that I've spent some time just with a nice glass and just reading it all. Fascinating stories.
One piece before we leave it though. So why tell that story? So it is a direct tie to rum in Alberta. That for sure. It also happens to be a part of the world that I grew up in, with my dad working in the mines in the Elk Valley. So I grew up on the B.C. side. I moved to Calgary in 98. And also Philomena happens to be the great aunt of one of my good friends growing up. So I actually have permission from that side of the family to be telling this story in that version. So there are some unique ties to it. So some unique ties to rum, and also from just being from the region.
I'm feeling my arm. I've got goosebumps listening to that. That's fascinating. Absolutely, it's fascinating. But now, what else? Something else that's fascinating is one of your key people that is endorsing the product, and you can't get any more popular in Calgary and really around the world than Brett the Hitman Hart. Tell me how that came about.
That's a really interesting connection. I really came out of the blue. It started out doing some work with a marketing agency that brought him to the table. And we did some smaller scale stuff. It went well. We got along well. And I think that was the important part. We worked well together. So after we did some of that smaller scale stuff, we're like, well, what do you want to do going forward? This seems to be going well. We seem to like to work together. Would you like to possibly partner with us to, help get the word out across Canada? Well, first off, Calgary, Alberta, across Canada, US, overseas. And I was like, you know what? I think I'd like to do that. It sounds fun. So yeah, that's what we're doing. And he's definitely engaged. We were just out in New York this summer for both Brooklyn Bar Convent and the New York Rum Festival. He came out. He was serving drinks, interacting with everybody there. It was a great time. We actually managed to catch the precursor to the World Series. We got to watch the Dodgers play the Yankees in Yankee Stadium on that same trip too. So yeah,
cool. So what's obviously besides his name and his reach, what image does it portray for the brand, your brand, to have the Hitman be part of it?
The path that we're taking with it is of the established Hall of Famer. Given we are pushing a luxury product, we're going from someone who is now established, now has some of the finer things in life, enjoys the finer things in life, and one of those happens to be what we make. Definitely not shy to tie back to some of the wrestling roots and kind of that connection that makes people kind of my age and up go back to their childhood a little bit. Back to, definitely not afraid to try and tie into that at all. But really his image all the way through was of excellence. Even some of the in the cheesy wrestling lines, the excellence of execution, the best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be, all that sort of stuff.
Perfect. I'm trying to remember. Is there any of the brands that you guys put out, anything that with his name on it, or something that signifies he's associated?
We don't have anything directly linked. We're more tying stuff to it. If we do, well, I guess sort of this pink can here.
Yes, that's right.
See that? This is our Hitman Edition Cuba Libre. So it's got some brand elements on there. Yeah, we get a Christmas gift box as well that we do along with them. I actually just cleaned my office today before this meeting, so it didn't look too bad. I had one right beside me. I could have shown you, but
that's okay.
Oh, well.
Yeah. So, take me back and remind me. There was the first time I came into your place was for an event, and it was the Guinness record thing. So remind me again what was happening there and the outcome.
So we set the Guinness World Record for the world's largest Cuba Libre. So rum, Coke, and lime juice, all mixed up in a glass. We set that record at 1,006 liters. And I remember that, and Brett was there for that one. But holy smoke, that's a lot of rum. That is. And so an interesting piece with that, when you do a record with Guinness, when it's a consumable, it can't be wasted. You actually have to have a plan to consume that product.
Oh, okay.
So for our plan, we held a big wrestling event in the back where Brett's son, Dallas, launched his promotion, Dungeon Wrestling.
Yeah.
And so we had the big crowd back there. We took that Cuba Libre, we put it into kegs, and then we drank it at that event from the kegs. So it was a great time.
Yeah, great. So, Thomas, when you look back on starting this business and getting it rolling, what was the biggest challenge for you in starting the business?
Ooh, they're tough. There's several. It's tough to rank one. Honestly, some of the regulatory hurdles, particularly at the municipal level, have been extremely challenging. I'm not sure how far I want to dive into that before I end up putting a foot in my mouth. But I think coming out of the gate, we were hit with some stuff that we were not expecting after a lot of thorough planning. Coming from the backgrounds that we came from, we thought we had it pretty dialed in, and we were hit with some surprises that cost us a lot of money and a lot of delays.
Discover the latest trends, strategies, and success stories in the ever-evolving world of business. CanadasPodcast.com. Subscribe now.
For yourself, coming from your background and what you did, and kind of like an office job, right? What do you like about being an entrepreneur and not being in an office? Well, you're in an office, but
I guess we're down. We get on the tools a bit. That was part of why we wanted to do this, and I hope I always still have that ability to do that, to get down and still pull some levers and turn valves and sweep the floor from time to time. Honestly, it was more about control of my own future. To be honest with you, after I got laid off in 2015, that hit me pretty hard, and I kind of you kind of build up a false sense of security sometimes when you're working with a larger corporation.
Yeah.
And yes, what I'm doing now as an entrepreneur is very risky. Failure rates are through the roof, particularly in the business that we're doing. But we're in control. We're the ones making our decisions on how we're going to go forward. And that to me, yeah, that means a lot.
Mm-hmm. Would you recommend for people, if they have that, I guess, passion and an idea that to get into doing something like this, being an entrepreneur?
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah.
If your only reason to not do something is why not, then why wouldn't you? If you have the economic means to do it, you know, I would caution those who may not have that ability to make that happen, and not have a cushion, to just take a run at something blind would be foolish. But if you have the means to make it happen, and your only reason is why not, yeah.
What do you do, Thomas, outside of running this business? What do you do to, I know that, being an entrepreneur can be busy. Well, not can be, is busy
Yep.
for everybody. And often it may seem to be like a 24/7 job. But what do you do to relax and outside uh, of the business operation?
Well, I'm married with three kids, so chasing them around is pretty much a second full-time job. They're all in competitive sports.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, my oldest does rodeo, and my
Oh,
middle
wow.
son is competitive in Muay Thai and traveling literally all over the world. And our youngest just got into competitive gymnastics, which is no shortage on time either.
Yeah.
But outside of that, when I get a chance, I like to play a little bit of hockey. And I actually also started training, doing the Muay Thai with my son.
Wow.
Since I'm driving him out all over the place, might as well get in there and do it too.
Okay. When's one of your children going to start imbibing in the rum?
I don't know. Yeah, I shouldn't say too much, but yeah, when they're 18.
Yeah. But so, excuse me for asking, but Romero, what nationality is that?
Oh, my dad's from Spain.
Oh, he's from Spain. Ah, okay.
Yeah.
It's,
So the Oloroso sherry casks that we mature, both our amber and our cask strength rums in, are from a region about an hour north of where my dad's from. And we still have family down there, and they're out scouting stuff out for us before we order in new casks. And yeah, it's
really?
pretty
Oh,
cool.
excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess it makes a difference, eh? The cask.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
100% it does. You can turn really good stuff into something really bad, but putting it in a bad barrel.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But people from Spain aren't. It's not rum's not a staple there, is it? Like,
No, it wouldn't be as much. No.
no. Yeah, yeah. Where do you find your customer? Who would you, I guess, define from a demographic point of view, like who your customer is? Like young, old, male, female?
I'd say the primary would be male, range 40 to 65.
Oh, yeah.
Is that sweet spot. Obviously, there's still lots of women that come through here. There's lots of folks that are younger than that come through here. But I would say that primary demographic, that's what we see.
Yeah. Do you find that there's more people, especially in the younger people, liking say craft spirits these days?
Yes, not even necessarily craft. I'd say a trend towards premiumization. I find a lot of the younger folks aren't drinking as much, but they do enjoy to try something unique and different and spend a little bit more when they do.
Yeah, for sure. All right. And last question I have for you, Thomas, where do you see the company going in the next few years?
Well, we'd like to continue to expand our footprint here in Canada and solidify our operations in the States that we're currently operating in now. We've done a little bit of exploration in Europe. Actually we had one bulk sale over there that was part of an advent calendar, 24 days of rum, which is
Oh, wow.
available across all of Europe right now. So we'll see what uptake is on that. And we were just at a trade show there where we saw a lot of interest. So turning interest in actual hard sales, though, is a very long, slow process. So we likely won't be touching that for a couple of years, but we'll see how it goes.
All right, wonderful. Well, thanks so much, Thomas, for joining us today.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thanks for having me again.
All right, that was Tomas Romero, who is co-founder of Romero's Distilling Company. Sorry about that. I'm Mario Toneguzzi, managing editor of Canada's Podcast. Thanks for joining us today.